because I just realized I did not start that from the beginning. But this is a great thing to say, that you can be accessing our, if you can't watch all of tonight, you can head over to our website and catch the rest of the conversation on our website later on this week. I love what you said, Morgan, about being grounded and grounding, because we talk a lot about that at Foster's. And meditation is a part of every single one of our residencies, because we feel it's important to find grounding before being in a group, being creative, or be like community engagement in that way, but grounding yourself first. What are some ways that people can ground themselves? You know, what are some ways that as they're starting to feel out of control in that way, as things start, opening up again, as we've gone from isolation to kind of expansion, what you were just saying, how can artists ground themselves?
So there's a couple of like super really tangible things. One is literally getting on the ground. It's called grounding for a reason, right? And I know this is not always an option, but literally getting on the ground. If you're outside, it's summer, if there's grass around, take your shoes off and put your feet on the ground, right? The earth has energy. That's what it can do. It can ground you. Another really wonderful practice for grounding and self, tuning into what's going on with you is literally to just, I'm frantic, I'm frenzied, just, you notice it, fine, stop, put your hands on your heart if you can, take a breath and just say, what do I need in this moment? And whatever comes up, that is okay. I need a cup of coffee. I need to close my eyes for 5 minutes. I need to scream obscenities into the air or call my best friend, whatever it is. Allow yourself to be in touch, because grounding is about getting in touch with the self, right? Another one I really like, when we're kind of in acute frenzied state, it's called a break state, and it actually comes out of a trauma protocol that was developed after 9/11. When you're really in it, right? It's literally looks towards the ceiling. This is going to activate the part of our nervous system that tells our body to calm down, to regulate. We look up, we take a breath in through the nose, we breathe out through the mouth, focusing on exhaling, focusing on the exhale being longer than the inhale, okay? And then as you're looking up, simple things like recite your phone number forwards and then backwards and then forwards. Spell your name forwards and backwards. Reset your address forwards and backwards, because it's just the brain is freaking out, and it's helping the brain to go right, kind of shift the gears. So those are and there's plenty more, right? So but those are a couple that I use all the time and that I have a lot of clients use.
That's I think we also talk a lot about at Foster's how we believe that the artists are the healers of humanity, right? But that also takes on a lot of responsibility of actually being those healers, of doing that work. And I can see the intersection so much between your work as an artist and your work as a therapist, right? That the helping and then healing in that way. I think there's a huge intersection. How, in what ways, as artists embody these difficult characters, as artists, as they are as theater performers, maybe go through trauma so that other people don't. In what ways are there ways, or how can we make sure that we're checking in with ourselves in order to process all of that?
Okay. So it broke up for a minute there, but I think I heard most of the question. Really, it sounds like what you're saying is, if we feel on some level tasked to do our work to help other people, but how do we not overextend ourselves so that boundaries, right? So one thing to keep in mind is that while absolutely the art heals, music heals, all these things are totally healing, remembering that people want to heal. It does not matter what kind of work. Often the work is healing
You might be having a little rough
work
connection, right?
somebody that you cannot that
We had lost Morgan for a second. Let's see. Morgan, are you back? Maybe. Hello. We had lost you for a second. But I think you might be back now.
Should I move?
Okay.
Should I move spots to a different spot?
I think we're okay now. I think we're good.
Can you hear me?
Maybe I can hear you now.
Okay. All right. Okay. Yep.
There we go. Yes.
Talking.
Yes.
Still talking. There we go. Okay.
There we go.
Okay.
So, backtrack for one moment.
Yes.
I think, and I'm actually going to turn my camera off and move in just a second.
Yes.
To make sure it's not me. But also,
okay.
Just rewind maybe and say, how do we make sure that we are taking care of ourselves as we are also the givers through all of that?
Right. Oh yeah. So I mean, you're talking self-care, like self-care on the daily basis, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, that's really a self check-in, and it's a practice. I think what's interesting about the last year is that so much of self-care and checking in with the self, being able to take care of the self, being able to give yourself what you need has to do with trusting yourself. If there's a break, then it's hard to even access what it is that we need. And with everything that happened over the last year, I think that on a really universal level, trust really was an issue for a lot of people. It was, we were living in a space in which we felt like, well, I don't know, I can't speak for everybody, right? But trust was that when we're talking about fear, we're always talking about trust, right? They intertwine with one another. So to check in with what you need to do to take care of yourself, there are those practices like stopping and saying, what do I need in this moment, and giving that to yourself. There is journaling, there's meditating, but I think really at this point in time on a bigger spectrum is allowing what used to work for you, allowing it to shift. Because it might be different, and it probably will be different as we go ahead from this new space. We're in a new space and we've never been here before. So acknowledging that there are things that I used to love to run 10 miles every day through Central Park, and then the pandemic happened, and then I got really scared. What do I do now because I don't feel like I can run, right? Things are going to have to shift because you're still going to have to take care of yourself. Yeah. Allowing. Yeah.
We are big advocates here also at Foster's of finding your own professional help through everything too. Just to say that out loud. We are more than happy. I'm so thrilled we can have this conversation, but also finding someone that is that you can talk to, that is also, I think, wildly important through everything, just to say that out loud.
Yes.
I'd love to, I'm sure we could talk about this now all night, but I'd love to talk about anxiety, because so many people are talking about this right now, or so many people I've experienced, just friends that are, or colleagues that are in this business, that specifically theater, that has been shut down for a year and a half, right? We've had to, as a community, grieve loss, and then now all of a sudden, on the other side of that, here we are. What does it look like to create? There's all of these other questions that are starting to bubbling up, and I think attached with that comes anxiety. Can I do this anymore? Am I so good at this? Do I want to do this? Is that, there's so many, which I think is attached to that. So I wonder if you can talk a little bit about anxiety, and maybe how do we start to process that, you know?
Yeah. Oh, anxiety. She's a beast. Well, anxiety is interlaced with fear. Oh, always. Anxiety is interlaced with fear. Also, when you say, how do we start to process that? We talk about it, right? Shame cannot live in the darkness. We talk about it. You said before, you guys are big advocates of seeking professional help. Yes. Right. I have more clients right now that have never gone to see a therapist before, because this is, again, no one's been here before, right? So, but I loved, you and I talked a little bit a couple of days ago about, you were sharing this experience you had working on the boat, setting, I can't remember what show it was, but you were setting a show for Norwegian, right? And dancers, people who are coming in and have done this thing their entire lives and who are at the top of their game athletically, professionally, all of these things are being injured, because we've been, no matter how much practice you do, you can't, there's nothing that really replicates dancing 8, 9, 10 shows a week, right? No matter how much you try and keep shape. So I talk a lot about self-narrative. I had this story about who I was and how I operated in the world. And then the pandemic happened. And really, we had very little control of what was going on outside of us, not to mention in that stillness and in that removal of distraction, a lot of personal stuff came up, right? Oh, there's all that things that my dog that died when I was 7 and I never cried about it. Like all this stuff, right, is coming up. And then we go back out into the world and we're trying to take that old narrative with us about how we should be able to do things, how we should be able to operate. Well, I should still be able to sing Elphaba 8 times a week because that's what I did for a long time. We got to shift the narrative, right? Anxiety comes from trying to hold 2 opposing beliefs as fact. So if I believe I should be able to do this, that is a fact. I used to be able to do this 8 times a week and I should be able to do this. And now I am realizing I cannot do this. Like I just don't have the whatever, I need to work back up my chops. Anxiety comes from holding 2 opposing beliefs and trying to make them both true. They are not both true.
So, but even underlining that, I think is so powerful. Like even in understanding that, I've never heard it put that way, Morgan. I've never heard that, like, that
cheers.
Is
oh yeah.
An aha moment
Yes.
of saying, oh, okay, that's why I'm feeling this. So there's 2 thoughts here that I'm thinking both are true, and they can't be. They can't live in the same space.
Yeah. And if you hear yourself, so anxiety, a big marker for a lot of people about anxiety is I should be able to, I should do this, I should want to, I should, right? And in my family, my mom says, stop shoulding all over yourself. So we flip the should to a could. I could if and because, right? I should go to the gym, right? Yes, I'm not even going to go there, right? I should go to the gym. I don't want to. Okay. I could go to the gym, but I only slept 3 hours last night. I could go to the gym if I had a bigger breakfast and had more energy. I could go to the gym and I might feel better. I might feel worse, right? Like there's got to be space, man. We got to give ourselves some space, some compassion. You hear the shoulds. It's a big ticker for something that wants to be looked at. Replace the should with a could and just see what comes out. We have so many of our own answers. Yeah.
What I love about what you just said is we talk about a lot at Foster's too, about how do you find your own authentic voice, your own authentic artistic voice. And a should is somebody else's idea of what it, right? That's not your own. Even saying a could, you can still go to the gym with a could, right? Like that's not saying you can't.
Absolutely.
Or, you know, whatever that is. But finding your own voice, your own point of view, that's what we're interested in at the work we do it here in Foster's is what is your voice and what is not some outside idea. And I think that a lot of times anxiety we find within the theater community is because of the shoulds. I should go to this audition. I should go take this dance class. I should do. but what is it that actually you, the artist, want to say, have to say? That I'm much more, and we at Foster's find much more interesting than any should at all. Morgan, I loved what you also said about the narratives we tell ourselves. And I think this correlation of people in theater, whether you are an actor, whether you're a playwright, a director, a choreographer, a lighting designer, a set designer, it could go on and on and on. We're all telling stories. That's our job.
Yeah.
So whenever this group of people who knows how to tell stories so well starts telling a false story to themselves so well, what does that look like? Or can you please, I'm so intrigued by the work that you're doing in unpacking this and discovering this.
Yeah, what does that look like? Well, we've all seen what that looks like. I think probably most of us have experienced it personally. And we've also seen that person in the dressing room who are like, what is going on, right? You meet those people at an audition or in a anywhere, and you're talking to somebody and you're like, are we talking about the same thing? Like, is there a person in there? That's what happens. That is what starts to happen when we start to tell ourselves a false narrative. It comes from pain, right? I mean, it comes from pain, fear, trauma, all of these things. There's something, most of the time, there's something that we're not wanting to deal with. And to not deal with it, we kind of wrap it in this little, we're like, okay, I don't want to deal with you, but I'm going to give you this little chocolate coating and I'm going to keep you like right here, right? But in order to still go on and live my life, there's a word I'm trying to think of and I can't, to adapt, basically, right? To be adaptive. I have to figure out how to make this, and sorry if you can hear roosters in the background, I live on a farm, everyone. If you can, how to figure out how to move on with my life and make this either invisible or it's just okay, it's just a part of my story, and for some people we have to cut off, it's like cutting off your nose to spite your face, right? I can't deal with this, so therefore I'm not going to deal with anything that has to do with that. I think it's Brene Brown talks about selective numbing. You cannot selectively numb your emotions. So when you say, what happens when we start to unpack that? Well, you may come in and sit down and say, okay, I think I need to talk about this thing that when my dog passed away when I was 7, it was a challenge. And all of a sudden we're talking about something that happened last week and you're sobbing in tears, right? Because if we're not accessing joy, then we're not accessing joy on any level, right? If we're not accessing our pain, then we're not accessing our pain really on any level. So that's not to say you don't feel pain, right? But if we are numbing in one area, it carries through the course of our life. It carries through to the other areas. So unpacking that, really, the interesting thing is the narrative can be rewritten. And we use this a lot, as I like to call it, a hack, because a trauma-informed approach in clinical care means that we're going to work through your issues without re-traumatizing you, without making you more upset by repeatedly being exposed to the thing that happened, right? How do we take a trauma-informed approach to artistry? How do we work with people and recognize that for some people, for them to be authentically themselves means right now, I can't actually be in my body. Trauma lives in the body. If it's not processed, it's stored in the body. So as much as we want to be, and this was a big struggle for me. I had a lot of trauma. I didn't even know it. And as an artist, I felt like I was always falling short because I'm going, well, why can't I connect? Why can't I connect? And I'm trying and trying and trying, but it's like, there's literally a block, right? Internally. So instead of making people feel like they are falling short, because the narrative of a performer is to be able to get in and get in touch and be authentic and let your wounds be shown to the world, right? That's not going to work for everybody. So what does it look like to be authentically you in this moment with your baggage, with your trauma? How do we still hack into a genuine performance, what have you, right? Or a genuine experience? And that has to do with the narrative work. In a narrative approach, we'd say, okay, well, who is that person? You can't be there right now, but the person that can get into that space, who is she? Who is he? Who are they? What's their name? How do they see the world? It's like you create an ally for yourself, and you allow your work to be spoken through that person. One of my allies is Donna from Parks and Recreation. If anyone knows her, like when I can't get right with myself because I'm emotionally fracked out, right? I'm like, Donna, what's the Donna energy? And immediately you have an answer, right? And if it comes up for you, it's because it's part of you. So it's my long answer to that question.
No, I think that's great. I think that I find all of that extremely fascinating. So we actually have a few questions that I want to go into, and two of them are from messages from people. So the first one has to do with imposter syndrome. It's a little long, but the kind of condensed version is every single time that this person, whether they get the role or they get in the room, they feel they're not worthy of it. That they feel that they got there by mistake, or they got there. It's not. People don't really see who they really are through this. I feel that shows up a lot in theater. Is that something that you seen? And this person's asking is how do they process imposter syndrome?
Yes, and yes. Oh man, and this is something again that I have worked through. My personal experience, my clinical experience is that imposter syndrome, and I know we'll do the deep answer, both short, the deep answer and the sort of short answer. The deep answer is that a lot of imposter syndrome has to do with the narrative, has a lot to do with the dynamic between the inner child and the adult self. Okay. So imposter syndrome frequently is the inner child. This may speak to people or not. The inner child is freaking out because, like, picture you as a 6-year-old, and you're asking a 6-year-old to walk into a room full of really powerful people and like totally be vulnerable, right? And the 6-year-old maybe has been picked on their whole life, or maybe the 6-year-old is afraid of adults, whatever. That 6-year-old has their own issues, right? You're asking the 6-year-old to do something that's really scary, and there's no adult wrapped around that 6-year-old to say, hey, I got you. No matter what happens in that room, I love you. I got you. I have your back always. You are worthy because we are one. You are worthy because you exist, right? So this dynamic between inner child and adult, and that's more for a professional or that deeper part is like something you might want to work through it with a therapist or something. But I will say that is not that is so common. Again, we don't talk about these things, but that is so common. And this awareness for so many of us, because of whatever happened in our childhood, we don't always step into the role of the adult. And especially in that power dynamic in theater, where you kind of feel so often like you're at the mercy of the people who are in the room deciding, right? So you go in feeling like, I'm here to maybe be chosen, but they're the adult, versus walking into the room as the adult and saying, hi, here's what I have to offer. It might serve you and it might not, right? If they need a mathematician and you're a librarian, you're not going to get the job. It's nothing personal, just is what it is, right? But the adult self is the one who has that rational mindset. And a lot of times we get stuck in child mode. Also, the child mode, that's where creativity and fun and frivolity, that it's so important, right? It's not about losing the child, but it's about making sure the adult is cultivated and the child is cultivated, and that they can work together. Yeah.
I want to circle back real quick too, Morgan. Yes, I think it's so great whenever you were saying that the trauma that you've dealt with, what I think is so incredible is here you are a clinical therapist. You have your master's degree in social work, somebody who really understands human behavior, and to recognize that even just by understanding doesn't mean that you aren't going through it too, that there aren't. Oh, yeah. But I think I'm fine. Everything's fine. Yeah. I think that's so important in creating space that everybody feels they can talk about it, that is an important. I'm going to again circle back to like this crazy, what does this world look like when we open up again, and what when we get back to theater. But I think that one of the most important things is that we have to talk about it. That's, you know, like that can't go without that, you know, which actually circles into another question we had a direct message from. It has to do with, I'm reading, sorry. Okay, so this individual is having a really hard time with what we were talking about in the beginning, feeling like they have personal growth through all of this year, personal growth as an artist, but also personal growth of what they want the business to look like. But they have a hard time. They feel like they're falling back into old habits of what was before this, and how to get out of that.
Yeah. So my first response is, of course you are, because everybody is. I say that with total love, myself included, right? I had a thought and it just escaped me. We talked about this expansion, contraction, right? You have already made the shift, simply inherent in the fact that you can see yourself falling back in. You have already made it to the other side of the habit, right? If you can see yourself falling back into it, you have perspective, which means that you have already started to like dig out the new place in which you want to be. Falling back into habit is because it's a habit, right? And because we have re-entered, it's like, I left a relationship I was in for 5 years and I didn't see that person, and I went off and became this whole new person, and then I see them again and all of a sudden I'm a crying puddle, right? There's associations. Or moving back in with your parents after you've been an adult because of the pandemic. Are we frozen? No, okay.
No, we're good.
So recognizing that falling back is totally a natural part of the process, right? We go, oh crap, I'm here again. Well, you already did it once. You can do it again. So now this is what we're talking about. You get to start rewriting the narrative, and it's called the apology prayer. Something I heard recently that I love is essentially this idea, if this is helpful, this idea of, I used to show up as this, and now I'm choosing to show up as this. I hope that you can love and support me in doing that. And a lot of us are going through this, so it's not necessarily about the apology, but sometimes it's saying, I'm sorry that I used to show up as a person who would allow myself to be pushed around, because in reality, I'm actually somebody who's very strong. I lied to you because I was lying to myself, but this is who I am now, and I hope you will support me in being this person in the world, right? That's like an actual journaling thing you can do. And then one other thing really quickly is to share your story. Share your story with who you are now with the people around you. And that is not accessible for everyone. I understand that. So this is general, but write out your narrative, whatever that is, right? And share it with the people around you. Let them know, you know what? This is who I'm choosing to be now. People will support you and they will be inspired. I guarantee it by that.
You keep on bringing up this like rewriting the narrative. And I'm just going to speak from personal, why I love that so much is it puts me in charge.
Yeah,
right? It puts me in charge of saying, actually, I can say what I need right now. I can say what I want to do right now. And that can change from what I need and want tomorrow. And that can change from what I need and want a month from now. And I think that's really important as whatever this is happening post-pandemic looks like, to be able to check in with ourselves to say, I'm in charge. I'm in charge of this.
Absolutely.
And if I'm unhappy, I'm not saying that's easy, right? But if I'm unhappy, I can change it in that way as well.
Yes.
I think that's really powerful.
Yeah. Well, you said, sorry, are you going to a question?
No, go for it.
Okay.
No.
You said something, there's a large cat, I can hear it. You said something before we were talking about, just how the course of this dialogue, and you said to me, well, this is you used a very nice word, which was you're the expert in your field, right? So bring some of that knowledge. And do I have a lot of knowledge? But interesting is my knowledge. When I left graduate school, what I knew how to do was make sure if like, how do I see if somebody is going to harm themselves? Crisis. How do I engage with somebody who's having who's actively in psychosis, right? These really big things. That's really where that expertise. That's why I need to have a license to do this, right? The beautiful thing is that I really enjoy helping people figure these things out about themselves, but you are the whole you are the expert on you. You are already the expert on you. I'll say it again. You are already the expert on you. You already know what you need. We said this at the beginning. It's the trust. It's the self-trust. Last year was really tricky in a lot of ways, right? Having the self-trust to acknowledge and be okay with the fact that I already know what I need. And if the narrative right now is saying that I have to get my needs approved by somebody else, you get to shift the narrative. And I'm not saying that, again, like you said, that's not a flawless process. And it doesn't mean that there's not going to be kickback from somebody, right? But part of your narrative gets to be, I shift my narrative. And when other people are upset with me, I just repeat my narrative and I choose not to, I don't have to be mad at them. It's fine if they're upset about who I'm choosing to be now. That's their process. That's their prerogative. You don't have to lose your expertise on yourself because somebody else doesn't like it.
I think that's profound, and I think yeah, that's and to be underlined and examined, and I think that's amazing. I'm gonna ask the next question. I'm gonna give you actually personally from myself. As the world starts opening back up, I think what I'm dealing with and what has been difficult for me is the question, can I still do this? Am I still good at this? I will say personally, that is new. I have never questioned that before. I'm a very confident person, but am I out of practice? Was I ever good at this? What is it? What, you know what I mean? These questions that kind of circulate in my head to say, I guess it's a little bit of imposter syndrome, but it also just may be, I don't know, but I think a lot of artists are dealing with that right now. And how do we deal with those voices in our heads and still move forward and still be creative human beings?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I am working with somebody and they have questions like, can I, do I, and the imposter thing, this feels really important just to throw in. I should have said it earlier. A really active way to deal with imposter syndrome. I know it's difficult. We're talking about auditions and things like that, but a really active way is to do it. I hesitate to say this sometimes. Do it for free. Do something, cultivate something that you can give away to people, that you can give as a reminder to yourself that you know what you're doing. It's not about other people. It's not about gaining their praise, right? I, as Jason knows, when I have launched a private practice on the side, and I had a lot of imposter syndrome at first. Who am I to start a private practice? Who am I? Blah, 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 all this crap, right? So I worked with a couple of my friends, very briefly, worked with a couple of friends and a couple sessions with different people for free. And I was like, oh yeah, oh no, I do know what I'm doing. Great, got it. And off we went, right? So, but if I was sitting with someone in session who's asking questions, when people come in and they have those questions, I say, okay, well, let's answer the questions. So Jason, can you still do this?
Yes.
How do you know you can still do this?
I guess because just from the act of doing it, quite honestly.
Because you're already doing it, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So that is my first response always. Is like, you're coming to me and you're asking these questions. I'm not you. So I'm going to flip the mirror, right? Can I still do this? I don't know. Can you still do it? Well, yeah. But am I still good enough? I don't know. Are you still good enough? Have you been hired since? Are you still working? Have you lost your apartment? Has someone said, please don't ever come back to Broadway? We don't ever want to see you again. We've changed our minds. Like, there's some part of the anxiety is we try and have these one-way conversations with ourselves about what's going on with other people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's really, so if you think again in that adult's inner child thing, right? The inner child is going, I'm scared. I don't understand where we are right now. We've never done this before. Can I still do this? What would the adult say? What would your adult self say to a 6-year-old who's like, I feel nervous. I feel scared. Well, honey, why do you feel scared? Well, I feel scared because everything's changing. Okay, well, let's talk about it, right? We can have that dialogue and we can answer our own questions.
That
a lot
goes
of times
into
it's simple.
I did not get to this part of the question from before that was from one of the same people, but it was talking about it was the question was tied in self-work and opening up. But how do you shift from needing outward validation for what we do? I think that's as artists something that everybody struggles with, right?
Yes.
That outward validation of being like, somebody else needs to tell me I'm good in order for I'm good, or somebody else needs to hire me so that I know I'm hireable, or whatever that means. Can you talk a little bit about struggles with artists and outside validation?
Yes, I can talk about it from personal experience. I can talk about it from professional experience. We are in such an interesting industry, both of us, because my work, it was the same as a performer, is the same as my work now as a clinician. My work is valid. It exists because somebody else comes in and chooses to hire me to work, right? I work for somebody else. I work for my client in the theatrical capacity, you work for the show, whatever the case may be. So, I know I keep saying this again is self-work. Who is it? If we're constantly looking to somebody else to tell us that we're good enough, who is it that really has the power to speak to us? And the secret answer is you. Ultimately, it needs to be us. Ultimately, we are the ones that need to validate ourselves, not just need to validate ourselves. We are the ones with the ultimate power to validate ourselves, right? Because by the same token of I didn't get the job, so I don't feel validated, there's a flip side to that, which we don't go into, which is that time you have an experience with somebody where somebody is like really being a jerk to you and they feel like they're so on the correct and whatever's going on, or you're having this experience with your partner and you're sitting there and you're almost calm because you're like, no, I know I'm right about this. I know I'm correct. Like in this moment, yes, I'm a flexible person. I can compromise. In this moment, I actually know I'm right. That it's like, boom, it's that part of us that in that moment, you're validating yourself, right? No, that guy, he pushed me on the subway, whatever it is, right? I know my experience. We know when we walk out of an audition and we freaking nailed it. We know when we walk out of an audition and we sucked. We just do, right? So again, it's that tenderness of being reparenting or parenting yourself. Everybody has a different experience, right? But that tenderness with self. And then there's also some really topical stuff. Like, is there other stuff going on in your life that has any value? For many people, it's easy to turn theater into the only thing. This is the only thing of worth. And then we look at what happened last year, where your entire identity is wrapped up in the only thing that gives me value is having these gigs, and that's taken away from you. And you're going, who the hell am I? And then you get to answer the question, right? You get to provide value to yourself in your life.
I think that also as artists, sometimes we think that, or we're so passionate, we dive headfirst in everything we do is about that. And so when that's taken away, your identity gets shifted, right? Your identity says, who am I without this? And I think that's what a lot of people went through in the past year. Wait a minute, this thing that I dedicated my life to has been taken away. What does it mean? Like, who am I? Can I exist without this?
Right.
And then, so here's this huge momentous thing that was a part of so many people's lives. And then we found out who we were without it. And then here it comes again, like, boop.
Yeah.
So now that's the figuring that out, the balance.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
And I'm actually extremely excited to see what comes from that. Because I think it is a momentous shift that is going to happen specifically within theater and how we tell theater and why we tell theater and who we tell theater for. I don't think that this old way worked. And so now we learned all of this information and combining the two, I think is going to really make a lot of positive change. Not easy change, but positive change.
Yeah, and I know we're at time. This we talk about, self-care in the work. How do I not lose the new self that I am? And with the old self and the way things were and the way things are. Being mindful, if you find yourself jumping back into things, am I jumping back? Because you were just saying we throw ourselves into projects because we love them. Okay, fine, absolutely 100%. Being mindful, moving ahead. Am I throwing myself into this because it's what I want to do? Or am I throwing myself into this because I'm so scared to be in that space with myself anymore? I'm scared of missing a job. I'm scared, fear. Am I doing this because I'm so ready to pour myself into it? In which case, at the end of the day, we leave and we feel good. Am I doing to pour myself into this because I can't pour for myself? I need something else to pour into me, which generally at the end of the day, we feel kind of like an empty, anxious, nervous wreck. It's common. Not all the time. We all have our own ways of being, but so being mindful about that. Yeah,
that was really profound, Morgan.
Yeah.
We are about wrapping up here. This hour flew by.
So fast.
Oh yeah, it's so fast.
Yeah.
But Morgan, where can people find you for more information or where can people find you?
I have a website. It's MF. My name is Morgan Faulkner. M as in Mary, F as in Frank, or mofo. Seems to be easy for people to remember. MF Integrated. MF Integrated at gmail.com, or you can check out my website, which is mfintegrated.com.
And I just have to say, if you've never dealt with therapy before, I promise you, Morgan is somebody who takes so much care with you. And for artists who are out there too, if you're looking for help, Morgan comes with the experience of being an artist as well. So she understands so much about all that.
And if people are needing resource, like anything, it's not just about come be a client, right? Like if you need resources for I have got a lot of stuff up my sleeves. So just reach out. If you need help of any kind, I can help you get in a direction. Yeah.
And we'll also make sure whenever this video goes up on our website to put other like mental health resources for you as well as this is going up. We're so thrilled, and thank you for everybody who's watching tonight, who continues to be part of the Foster's family community. And thank you for everybody who's watching in the future. It's also so great to see all the people who are going to the website and watching past Foster's forums. So we see you and we thank you for being here. As always, Foster's forums and all of our programming is able to happen because of your generosity. So 2 very, very easy ways that you can donate so that these programming can continue. You can Venmo us at Foster's Residency, or you can go to our website at www.fostersresidency.org and make a tax-deductible, small or large, either one, donation.
I do $1 million a month.
Morgan, again, I truly can't thank you enough. And I just also want to say thank you for the work that you're doing for the community. Thank you for the work that you're continuing to do as we move through trying to make, as artists, as clinical therapists, make humanity a better place.
We're doing our work. Thank you. Yeah, my pleasure.
All right, everybody, have a great night, and we'll see you next month at our next Fosters Forum. Have a good night,
Cool.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.